Now is Tim Alberta, Politico Magazine's chief political correspondent. So, Tim, I've been wanting to have this conversation with you for a while. You're out there, you're talking to a wide variety of voters, Republican voters in particular in Michigan. I want to know, are these voices, the Colin Powells, the Cindy McCains, the John Kasichs, the individuals who said they voted for Trump in 2016 and can't vote for him again, are they actually giving permission to enough Republican voters to make an electoral difference for Joe Biden?
Katie, it's a really good question. Individually, no, I don't think these endorsements, I don't think that these folks going out and vouching for Joe Biden are going to move a whole lot of votes. I do think that collectively, the drip, drip, drip of prominent figures, not just prominent Republican figures, but prominent apolitical figures. And as odd as it may seem to identify Michelle Obama, a former first lady, as apolitical, I thought that her speech the other night was actually really relevant to the wooing of one particular group of Republican voters, and that's suburban women. And stop me if you've heard this before, but this is the single voting demographic that we have seen the most movement with over the past 4 or 5 years. And the numbers of these voters, Katie, who broke away from the Republican Party after voting for Trump in 2016 are not insignificant. And if you were to see a continuation, an acceleration of that same trajectory that we've seen between 2016 and 2018 among a lot of these affluent, college-educated, suburban white women, if they are continuing to break from the Republican Party in significant numbers, then that's a mathematical obstacle that would be very, very difficult for the Trump campaign to surmount.
There was a lot of focus on those voters in 2016 as well, and there was this feeling that after the Access Hollywood tape came out and Donald Trump was bragging about where he was able to grab women because he was a celebrity, that there were suburban women in general, would never vote for him after all the allegations of sexual harassment and sexual abuse against the president. The feeling was there's no way it was going to happen. I kept running into voter after voter who said it didn't matter and it was just the way boys talked or behaved. You focus on what happened in 2018. That was a midterm election. Donald Trump wasn't at the top of the ticket. Is it fair to say, look what happened in 2018 as a certain indicator for what might happen this November?
Yeah, look, it's a really valid question, and you certainly would not draw only off of what we saw in 2018, though I do think the results are significant because when you think about the propensity of voters, these white college-educated women are about as high propensity as you can find when outside groups and super PACs and campaigns are doing their demographic profiling and trying to figure out who is most likely to vote and how they're going to vote. These are the people who come back time and time and time again. I think the difference, Katie, between what we saw in 2016 and what we're seeing now with some of these voters is that in 2016, when voters, specifically those suburban white women, when they heard the Access Hollywood tape, they were personally bothered by it. But as the president's then campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, theorized, she said, look, people act on what affects them, not on what offends them. And the truth of the matter was that for most people, the Access Hollywood tape didn't affect them. It just offended them. 3.5, 4 years later, we're in a very different situation where many of these same voters, they're not just offended anymore, they are affected. And that was what we began to see in 2018 in that midterm election, with some of those voters saying that Trump wasn't just bothering them at some sort of a spiritual or social or cultural level anymore, that he was having a negative impact on their families, on their communities, on their livelihoods.
So what's most affecting them right now in, August of 2020?
Take your pick, right? I mean, it's funny. So I've had conversations in the last couple of months with voters ranging from sort of working class, blue collar Democrats in Detroit to wealthy country club Republicans in Livingston County, which is a well-to-do exurb of Detroit in Southeast Michigan. And it's remarkable that on the one hand, Katie, these voters tend to live in different universes in many respects. They consume different news. They spend their time in different social circles. They don't overlap a whole lot, except that when it comes to the core issues defining this election and the things that are affecting them most, it's the same exact thing. They're worried about jobs and this sort of quasi-economic meltdown that we've experienced in recent months. They're worried about the government's response to COVID-19, both past, present, and future. And they're worried about this social upheaval and this unrest that they see manifesting itself in so many different ways. And that is a real powder keg for any incumbent president. This is a tremendously difficult hand to be dealt in an election year. And I think that obviously the way Trump has played that hand has only made it worse for him among that specific subset of voters that we were talking about earlier. When you are watching the returns come in on election night and when you're watching the exit polls, look specifically at college-educated white women who identify as moderate or as independent voters. Joe Biden wins that group by 6 to 12 points. Donald Trump is going to hang around and have a chance. But if he wins that group by 15, 20, 25 points, then the math just becomes impossible for Trump.
Tim Alberta. Tim, thanks so much for joining us today. We hope to have you again soon. Always appreciate all of your reporting and your insight.